Better late than never, which I feel like is the theme of my entire channel. So today I have to do my July wrap up. I can't believe that it's already August and that summer is like a little over halfway over. That's just crazy to me. I can't believe how fast not only this year but also summer itself has gone by. But I feel like July really kind of went by in such a flash for me because I read a lot of books this month, and also a lot of like life and family stuff happened in July, so it was all just kind of one big blur of a month. But I honestly have so many great, incredible romance books to talk about. I literally only read romance this month, so that's super exciting. I also have a few physical books to talk about. I actually read physical books this month, which is so exciting. I have been so deeply into physical reading this year, and I don't even remember the last time I read 3 physical books in 1 month. And also I'm pretty sure that I read 1 ebook, so I read a lot physically this month. I did finish a few audiobooks, which is great. For a while I was a little worried that like I was just completely off of audiobooks for a while, but thankfully this month I read a few really good ones, and I cannot wait to talk about these books with you. So we're just gonna dive right on in. I ended up reading 8 books in the month of July, and the first one that I started off with was Beg, Borrow, or Steal by Sarah Adams. And this is part of a series that I think I've read all of the books so far, except for the newest one. This is the 3rd book in the When in Rome series, and I have really enjoyed this series so far. I think I've given most of them 4 stars. One of them was a definite 5-star read, and I absolutely loved it. That was Practice Makes Perfect. That was actually the first book that I read in this series. It's the 2nd book in the series, and I loved it. It was so good. But I finally ended up getting to Beg, Borrow, or Steal, which I was super excited about. I had wanted to read this book for so long and just could not get my hands on it. Thankfully, I was finally able to get my hands on the audiobook, so I picked that one up. And basically, this book is about 2 teachers, and they have always kind of been in this sort of workplace feud with each other. They're both really very beloved teachers, but they are very different people. There's Emily, who's very type A, and then there's Jack, who's a little bit more freewheeling and fun. And when Jack ends up moving away, they kind of think that that is the last time they're ever going to see each other again. But a couple of years later, Jack moves back and they are kind of thrust into the same circle again and are sort of like forced proximity with each other. And this proves to be really trying, especially when Emily finds out that Jack has moved right next door to her. And so some hijinks ensue, some romance ensues, and I just really enjoyed this book. I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars. I really like Sarah Adams' writing style. I think it's a lot of fun, and she's really able to make you invested in these characters and really feel for them, and they feel like they are well-rounded real people, which sometimes I feel like can be a little bit of an issue, especially in romance books, where I'm like, this person does not feel like a real person, this person doesn't sound like a real person, they don't act like a real person, and I feel like I can't really get into those kind of romance books. But I really love Sarah Adams and the way that she develops her characters and the way that she develops the relationships between these characters, especially in this series where like everyone's story is so interconnected. I really love those kind of romance series. I think they're so much fun. I know some people don't really like them because they feel sort of like compelled to read all of the books in the series, which I totally understand, and I think that's probably kind of the point. But I really love that. I love getting to like see this world really expand and see these characters expand, and you get to really dig deep into everybody that is part of the story. It really almost reminds me of when I used to do like Tumblr role playing, and I was in like a role play group, and every character had their own story, but they were all interconnected, and I just think that's a lot of fun. I love getting to see the breadth of a story, the breadth of characters really just like come together and intertwine with each other. So I really like this series. I cannot wait for the next one. I think that Beg, Borrow, or Steal was a really solid romance. And also now thinking about it, I'm like, there was also a little bit of a issue with the plot. Like, I just felt like the plot was a little too vague for me, a little bit too all over the place. It didn't feel focused enough. Like, even trying to tell you guys what this book is about felt a little difficult to do, because there is a plot, but there also feels like it's not super focused. Like, it's not just about these two being rivals to lovers. There's also like this sort of really important side plot with Emily, the female main character's book that she's writing, and all of that. It feels a little bit disjointed, a little bit all over the place. Whereas I felt like with Practice Makes Perfect and even the first book, When in Rome, I felt like those two had much more focused plots, much more like, this is what the book is about and this is what you're getting. And not necessarily like, oh, we're starting off here and then we're going to diverge over here and then come back over here, and then, you know, it just didn't feel focused enough as a plot for me. Sometimes I feel like romance authors can do a little bit too much with the plot, where I'm like, okay, the book is supposed to be this, but now we're diverging into this, and it's like they feel like two separate books. And there's like the connection there isn't really working for me. I didn't feel like it was so much of an issue in this book, because I did really enjoy both of the plots of like the rivals to lovers thing, and also the side plot with the book, and trying to figure out all the hijinks that was coming from that. But overall, it just felt a little bit disjointed, and I feel like if it had been a bit more focused, I would have easily given this closer to like a 5 out of 5 stars. The next book I ended up reading was The Stand-In by Lily Chu, and I had been meaning to read this book for so long. I remember telling somebody who commented on one of my videos, who was like, oh, I hope that you read this book soon, and I really want to know what you think. I think that was like maybe a year ago, maybe even 2 years ago. I feel so bad for having put this book off for so long, but I did finally get to it and I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It's basically sort of a Princess and the Pauper idea, very loosely inspired by Princess and the Pauper. It's like not quite exactly the same, of like switching spaces, switching lives. It's more so that this normal girl, she is having a lot of troubles with work, and she also has to take care of her ailing mother, and she ends up finding out that she bears a very striking resemblance to a famous actress. And this actress ends up hiring her to be sort of her body double in real life, where the body double can go and do a lot of like the press stuff, a lot of like the mingling and socializing, and the actress can kind of, you know, work on her mental health, decompress, all that kind of stuff. And so that's basically the loose plot for this book. And there's also a very famous actor that this actress is very good friends with, and he is kind of roped into this little scheme, and he isn't really down for it. He doesn't think that it's gonna work, and so he kind of has to help the stand-in, the double, and help her figure out how to kind of like navigate this sort of like being an actress, being famous, having to mingle with people, having to socialize, having to like go out and do press stuff and stuff like that. So there is also sort of kind of like a slight loose enemies to lovers thing going on with those two. When I picked this book up, I thought that it was going to be like a split perspective, like we were going to get the perspective of the actress and then get the perspective of the normal girl. That didn't really end up happening, and so I was a little bit surprised by that. I don't know where I got that idea from, because you don't really see it in the back cover in like the synopsis here. It doesn't really talk about the actress all that much, so I don't know why I thought it would be sort of like dual perspectives, but it's not. I think maybe it might have been a little bit stronger of a book if it had been dual perspectives, and it is a pretty thick romance book. It's pretty long, and I feel like there were possibly a few sort of like filler scenes or scenes that felt a little bit repetitive that could have been replaced by the perspective of the actress character. So I might have enjoyed this book a little bit more if it had been dual perspectives. I mean, I love dual perspectives. It's something that I look for in books, that I really appreciate in books. But I will say that overall, I really did enjoy this book. I liked the writing. I liked the main character a lot. I really loved her love interest. I thought he was very swoony and very just like had like the full package. So this one definitely hit the mark for me and I really enjoyed it. So I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I believe I said that. I can't remember if I did or not. Really enjoyed this book. Highly recommended. Highly recommend both books. Honestly, I recommend every book in this entire video. There wasn't even really a book that I didn't like this time around, so that was really exciting. The next book that I read was Promise Me Sunshine by Cara Bastone, and I have been wanting to read this for so long. I feel like I've seen so many people talk about it and rave about it, absolutely love it, and I have to say that I loved it just as much as everybody else did. Like, I genuinely loved this book so much. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Literally immediately after reading this book, I made a Pinterest board for this book because I loved it so much. I considered making a playlist for Spotify, but I feel like when I read an audiobook, it's hard for me to make a playlist for it. I don't know why. I think it might be because like in my brain it's just like physical reading, you get a playlist because you have to listen to the playlist while you read the book physically, and I can't get like the right sense of how the physical book is going to feel through an audiobook, so it's harder for me to make a playlist for an audiobook. I mean, it can be done, but it's just harder. But I really enjoyed this book, and this is a romance book that deals a lot with grief, so huge trigger warning for grief. This is like a main aspect of the plot, so if that's something that is a little bit sensitive for you, then I don't really recommend reading this book because it is like, seriously, it is the entire plot of this book. Basically, this book is about the female main character Lenny, and she has recently lost her best friend and has been grieving that loss for a while, and it's been really tough on her. She finds it hard to go back to their apartment. She just finds it hard to like live her day-to-day life, and she also happens to be a nanny, and so she ends up taking this job and kind of gets sucked into this family where there's a lot of like interesting family dynamics going on. There's the single mother and her daughter, and then also the brother slash uncle that kind of like hangs around the family a little bit. It's like really weird, and I feel like you don't get a good sense of it until you read the book, like what's actually going on. But the brother slash uncle, his name is Miles, and he kind of is hovering around, and he is starting to get to know Lenny and is really trying to be more of a presence in his niece's life. So he always sorts of just like tags along on any of their little adventures, and he and Lenny get to know each other, and he ends up kind of helping her out through her grief. And truly, the story in this book, everything about it, the way that it explores and dissects grief is just so real and so true, and it didn't make the book feel too heavy, which I think can be the worry sometimes when you have like a romance book that is dealing a lot with grief. It can feel a little bit heavy, and I felt like it played a role in this book really well. So I highly recommend Promise Me Sunshine. I will try to link below the Pinterest board that I made. I know sometimes I'm bad at remembering to put links in the description, but hopefully I'll remember this time because I really liked it, and maybe if I make a playlist I will include the link as well, so we'll see. But I really enjoyed this book. It might be my favorite one of the month, maybe not, I don't know. It's really hard to say because so many of these books I absolutely loved. Okay, actually, now that I'm looking through the list, there are maybe like 1 or 2 books that I didn't totally love, but we're not getting to those quite yet because the next book that I have to talk about is One Golden Summer by Carley Fortune. I absolutely love Carley Fortune. I've become a Carley Fortune truther, a stan, if you will. I love this book so much. It was incredible. And I'm not quite sure if I love this book as much as The Summer Will Be Different, or if I like it more, or if it's like kind of on the same level, because they are so different that I'm just like, I don't know how to compare them. I don't know how to rank all of these books because like they're all so good. But this is another one that's kind of like part of a sort of interconnected series. I didn't know this going into the book, but it is kind of the spiritual successor, the spiritual sequel to Every Summer After, which thankfully I have read. This is the first book by Carley Fortune that I ever read, and it's the first book that she published. And I kind of had sort of mixed feelings about it. There were parts of it that I really liked. There were parts of it that I didn't like. I think I ended up giving it about a 3-star rating. I do, however, want to revisit it and see if I feel any different now that I've read more of her books. I don't know. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes I have like a judgment on a book and then I will come back to it after having a bit more context or having a bit more experience with an author, and I will be like, oh, actually, I do like this book a little bit more than I thought I did. However, we're talking about One Golden Summer, and I really enjoyed this. This basically follows one of the characters in Every Summer After. His name is Charlie, and it also follows the character Alice. And Alice is in town and she is helping her grandmother after her grandmother suffered a fall and is having a little bit of trouble getting around. So Alice is spending the summer with her grandma in this cottage on the lake, and she ends up running into Charlie, and she kind of realizes that he was actually one of the subjects in a photo that she took when she was a teenager. And she has become this like huge photographer. It's a really popular and famous photo now, and she realizes that Charlie is one of the boys that's in the photo, and she is like, I really wanted to be part of this friend group and have this sort of like perfect teenage summer. And now she's an adult and she's like, I want to try to like recreate that. I want to have this sort of summer bucket list in order to have this like perfect fairy tale kind of summer that I always dreamed of. And so in this book, she ends up hanging out with Charlie and becomes friends with him and just kind of like has this perfect summer. It's truly the perfect book to take with you to the pool or the beach or whatever, the lake. I really love the way that she beautifully details all of the emotions that these characters are dealing with, and she really creates this rich sense of setting and vibe, and just like all of these characters around the main characters feel so real and well fleshed out. And oh my gosh, Charlie, the love interest, he is just everything. He never really stood out to me in Every Summer After, which I think is fine because he's not really the main character in that book. But in this one, he shines. He is everything. He is iconic. He is everything. I remember saying in my like mid-year reading roundup video that I don't really have like crushes on characters anymore, but I have to say Charlie, he is my like newest fictional crush. Oh my gosh, I love him so much. Like, I remember finishing this book and just being like, I need to reread it just so I can re-experience Charlie all over again. I love him. I love him. I'm so serious. Okay, so the next two books are ones that I didn't really truly love as much as the rest of the books that I read in July. So we'll try to go through them a little bit quickly because I don't really want to linger too much on the negativity, but we have to get through them. So the next book that I read was We Met Like This by Kasie West. And Kasie West is typically a YA author, and truth be told, I have never read any of Kasie West's YA books. At least I don't remember. If I did read one of her books, I think you can kind of like surmise what I felt about it because I truly don't remember reading it. But I ended up getting an ARC from NetGalley for We Met Like This, so thank you to NetGalley for providing the ARC to me, and also thank you to Saturday Books for approving my request. And basically We Met Like This is an adult romance, and it follows this young woman, and she really wants to be a publishing agent, and she has been working for this agency for a while. She's sort of the assistant to one of the main agents at this agency, and she has actually been in a little bit of an affair with the guy that she's the assistant to. He's a little bit older. There's obviously like this power dynamic going on, but she is like fully into the affair. She seems to have fully consented to it, so there doesn't really seem to be like that kind of issue going on, but she really wants to be a real literary agent, and she is trying to convince her boss that like hey, take me seriously. I want to be a literary agent. You keep saying that we're gonna get the ball rolling on this, and it never really ends up happening or going anywhere, and I'm getting tired of it. And so she ends up ending this affair, and through a series of events, she ends up quitting her job. As this is all happening, she is sort of hanging out with this guy that she had matched with years ago and had gone on one really disastrous date that just like ended really badly. It, you know, just like the way that sort of like these internet dating relationships kind of go. And so now in the present, a few years later, they kind of like end up matching again on this dating website and end up hanging out and becoming friends, and all of this is happening at the same time that she's having all of these issues at work. On top of that, she also has a really weird family dynamic and a lot of tension within her family and a lot of resentment for the way that they treat her, specifically her older sister, who is like a content creator and is really famous and very just like successful, and she feels really threatened by her older sister's success. As you can tell, there's a lot going on, and I mean there's even more going on after she ends up quitting her job. She wants to start her own literary agency, and she wants to kind of like do things her own way, and there's a lot going on in this book. And at first I really enjoyed it. At first I was like, this is messy, but this is really fun. But then as the book continued on, the weirder and messier the main character's choices became. Too much was going on. Too much. Like I said earlier, I feel like sometimes romance authors can get a little bit heavy-handed with the plot. They can kind of wrestle themselves into these really insane and convoluted plots that do not make sense and that are way too overwhelming for the story that it's trying to tell. Like, too much is going on. Choose maybe one or two things to focus on. The rest of it, you gotta get rid of it. Like the dating app, the having the affair with the boss, the quitting her job, the family dynamic, the starting her literary agent. Like, it's so much happens. So much happens, and it's too much. And then there's a twist at the end that really piles it on, and I'm like, okay, enough is enough. We have to draw the line somewhere. We have to. It's too much. You're doing too much. So oh my gosh. And like I said in my review, I'm like, this reads like an Am I the Asshole Reddit story. Like, this reads like an Am I the Asshole for having an affair with my boss and quitting my job, starting my literary agency, having a fight with my sister, and dating this guy that I went on a really bad dating app date with. Like, it's too much. And yes, you are the asshole. I can't. I could not with this book. Like I said, I gave it 2 stars. I can't in good faith recommend this book, and I don't even know where to begin on the laundry list of things. And honestly, so many of the issues that I had with this book are huge spoilers. Like, I cannot talk about them because it will spoil this book. So unfortunately, I just have to say, too convoluted, too messy, unrealistic, crazy town. I can't do this. No, just not for me. Not for me. The next book that I ended up reading was Next Door Nemesis by Alexa Martin. I ended up not rating this book, and I'm not really quite sure what I would rate it if I had to rate it. But this is the kind of book that I just felt very, very meh about. I just didn't really have any super strong emotions towards this book. Basically, it's about this young woman, and she is moving back in with her parents after having some like job struggles or issues. And when she moves back in with her parents into her childhood home, she ends up kind of running into her childhood nemesis. And this is a guy that she used to be really good friends with, and something happened, I believe in like middle school or high school, and ever since then they have been sworn enemies. She ends up finding out that he is kind of like a higher up on the board of the HOA of their little neighborhood, and so when they have a little bit of a conflict, she decides that she is going to run for HOA president. That kind of starts a chain of events of like shenanigans and also of course romance, because like I said, I only read romance books this month. And overall, I really enjoyed this book. Like, I had a good time reading it, but there just wasn't really any lasting emotions for this book. I thought the main character was fine. I thought she was interesting. I thought the love interest was just okay, a little bit bland in my opinion, and I just like didn't really feel like there was all that much conflict between them that wasn't just like the female main character being really snarky and the male main character just being like, what? Like, I just didn't feel like there was enough actual conflict between them. It just felt very manufactured and very just like, who cares? But yeah, I just felt like overall this book was just very middle of the road. Very like, it was fine. There was nothing too seriously wrong with this book. It wasn't too unrealistic or too messy or too anything. It was pretty straightforward, run-of-the-mill, just a normal romance book. The second to last book that I read I really enjoyed, and that was The Romantic Agenda by Kann. This is another author who was a YA author, and I think that she still possibly publishes YA books, but she has also published a couple of adult books, and so this is the first adult book that I've ever read from her, and I ended up really enjoying it. I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars, and I thought it was really cute and really sort of this interesting dynamic at play, and kind of actually reminded me of another book that I read earlier this year. So basically in this book you have the female main character, and she has been best friends with this guy for literally so long, since basically the beginning of her college experience, and she became friends with this guy because at this LGBTQ sort of like fair thing at their college, he was the only guy or the only person really at the asexual table for this like LGBTQ mixer thing, and she ended up talking to him and finding out what asexuality was and realized that, hey, this sounds a lot like me, and that's how they kind of bonded in the first place. Ever since then they have been really good friends, and she has always wanted something more from their friendship. She's always wanted to be in more of this like romantic relationship with him instead of just being friends. However, he just kind of strings her along for like years and years and years, and along the way dates a few other different women who are not her. Meanwhile, she doesn't really do relationships. She kind of like has to have like a really deep emotional bond with the people that she is with, so it just doesn't really happen for her. And as the years go by, she's starting to get more and more fed up, and it sort of culminates into finding out that he is going on this camping trip with this girl that he's really interested in, and he ends up inviting her on this camping trip. Meanwhile, the girl that he's really interested in also invites her male best friend on this camping trip, and you kind of get the sense that like they're being set up a little bit. Like the female main character's guy best friend is really just trying to get her out of the way, trying to get her into this sort of relationship, or trying to kind of like distract her with this other guy in order for him to finally have a little bit of peace and a little bit of like, okay, I'm gonna have my own relationship, you can have your own relationship, it's good. And I think that that's kind of one of actually the main reasons why I did not give this book a 5 out of 5 stars, because I just felt like, girl, it's been years, he is not interested in you. Like, I think she just needed to watch the movie. He's just not that into you. Like, at some point after all these years, after all this time that he's dated other women, he has not expressed any actual romantic interest in you. At some point you kind of just got to get the hint, right? Like it has to compute at some point. But I get it. I love the delusion. I respect it, but I cannot encourage it. And honestly, sometimes in these type of books, there comes a point when the delusion is no longer interesting. It's just kind of sad. And I think that unfortunately this female main character kind of got past the delusion, the fun delusion, into the sad delusion. And I just really could not with her sometimes. I'm just like, girl, get it together. Figure it out. However, I did really like the female main character as a whole, and I really enjoyed her dynamic with the guy that she's kind of being set up with. I loved the two of them together. I felt like they really played off each other well. She's like very outgoing and very matter of fact. She really just like tells it how it is, and is also really playful and funny. And the love interest is just kind of like a little bit more reserved. He really like thinks before he talks, and he's just like a very thoughtful and really just more introverted, especially in comparison to the female main character. So I love that dynamic. I love the dynamic of like two very different people coming together and just working really well together. So really enjoyed that. Like I said, I didn't love the guy that she had been kind of like strung along with for years. I'm just like, okay, we got to figure it out. We've got to think a little bit more highly of ourselves. And I just thought like this guy, but beyond the like connection of like they're both asexual, what do they have in common? Not much. Like I didn't really see much of a reason for these two to really be that good of friends, and I didn't see a reason for her to be so dedicated to the idea of them being in a romantic relationship together, especially after all these years. I might have bought it a little bit more if it had only been maybe a year of friendship or whatever, but like multiple years, just like this long friendship of her pining for him and making it pretty obvious that she's super into him, and him just being like, I don't see it, no. You know, like he was clearly saying no this entire time. It's not going to be a yes. It's never going to be a yes. And so that just like really did not work for me. But overall, I did really enjoy this book. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I thought it was a lot of fun. I love Claire Kann's writing style. I think it's really fresh. And I obviously really enjoyed the asexuality representation. And the very last book that I read in the month of July was Problematic Summer Romance by Hazelwood. Okay. This might be my favorite book of the month. I loved it so much, and I cannot even believe how much I love this book. I have really enjoyed nearly everything I've read from Hazelwood. However, I will say that I've only finished 2 books from her in the past. I have started The Love Hypothesis. We're in the middle of it. We're getting there. And I have started Not in Love. I'm in the middle of it, we're getting there. However, I have read Love on the Brain and Love Theoretically, and I loved both of those. Those were both huge 5 out of 5 stars for me. I went into this book not thinking that I was going to be like particularly in love with this book. Like I didn't think that it was going to be like this huge like 5 out of 5, like oh my gosh, one of my new favorite books of all time sort of books. I just thought it was going to be a lot of fun, especially for the summer. But I ended up really loving this book. And if you didn't know, this is another thing I did not know. For some reason, I cannot figure out when books are supposed to be connected. But Problematic Summer Romance is kind of the sequel to Not in Love. I have not finished Not in Love. So if you don't want to be spoiled, you know, can you really spoil a romance book? Really, truly? We all know how every romance book is going to end. They're all going to have a happily ever after. We know that. But if you don't want to be too spoiled for Not in Love, I don't recommend reading this book before Not in Love, because you will get to know a lot about what happens in Not in Love. So I would highly recommend reading that one first and then picking this book up, but you do you. Obviously I did me, because I picked this one up before I even read Not in Love. So that was my fault. But basically this follows Maya, and she is 23 years old, and for the past couple of years she has had a huge crush on Connor Harkness, who is really good friends with her brother, her older brother, her much older brother. And they have this business together that I don't really understand what they do, because I don't understand anything having to do with like business or finance or anything like that. I think they're like finance bros. I think it's like a finance sort of business. I'm not sure. And honestly, Maya, the female main character, also does not really know what they do, so I don't feel too bad. But Connor, like I said, he is the really good friend of her much older brother. He is 38 years old. So like the title suggests, problematic summer romance, problematic summer romance. And this is something that really comes up a lot within this book, is that like he is kind of like, I don't know about this age difference. He's really kind of not very comfortable with it and is a little bit apprehensive of getting into any sort of romantic or sexual relationship with Maya. However, Maya is like, who cares? Who cares? They have a little bit of a history. They met when she was, I think, about like 20 years old and was going through a incredibly upsetting breakup, and he kind of helps her through it. He kind of becomes her friend, and they end up talking for the next few years, and things sort of happen, and it's really messy and very complicated, and it all sort of culminates when they all come together for Maya's brother's wedding. And it's a destination wedding. It's in Italy, and so you're kind of like on the Italian coast, and it's really beautiful, very summery, and they end up being put in very close quarters at this point, and so there's really no escaping. They have to be sort of like near each other and have to interact with each other, and it honestly really pushes their relationship forward and really kind of forces them to talk about things that they haven't really been able to talk about in the last year or so. And yeah, I absolutely loved this book so much. It was so funny. I love Maya as a main character. I love Connor as a love interest. He is so great. Oh my gosh, I'm obsessed with him. But yeah, I loved Maya. Maya really is like the shining beacon of this entire book. She is so funny and so witty, so quick, so smart. I loved her so much. And this is another one of those books that I immediately wanted to pick up and reread right when I finished it. I'm like, I need to be back in this world. And so I did end up picking up Not in Love from my library just to kind of like get myself back into the world. Maybe I will reread this book. I don't know. We'll see. But oh my gosh, I loved it so much. This might be my favorite Allie Hazelwood book. I don't know. It might be recency biased. It might just be me being like, I recently finished this book, and of course I loved it so much, and so now it's my favorite. I don't know. I did really love Theoretically, and I am actually kind of considering maybe possibly rereading Love Theoretically. I don't know. I can't keep making these ideas, like putting these ideas in my head of like, I'm gonna reread this book, because I almost never do. I'm so bad at rereading books. I have been trying to reread Beach Read by Emily Henry and The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab for the last few years. I read those books for the first time in 2020. It's 2025. I'm still rereading these books. I'm still in the process of it, because honestly, I mean, those books are kind of unique because they are so emotionally devastating to me that I can't read more than a few pages of those at a time without just like bawling my eyes out. So I don't think it'll be that emotionally devastating for me to reread this book or for me to reread Love Theoretically, but who knows? Honestly, with my mental state, anything is possible. So yeah, that was my entire July wrap up. I can't believe that I read this many books. I can't believe I talked about them for nearly an hour. That's crazy. I really enjoyed all of these books. Some of them a little bit less than I enjoyed other ones, but you know what I mean. For the most part, I had a really great reading month, which is so exciting. And thus far in August, I've had a pretty good reading month as well, so I am kind of on a roll. In the comments down below, let me know if you read any good books in July. Let me know what you are currently reading in August, since we are basically a week into August at this point. Also, let me know if you read any of the books that I read in July. Let me know what you thought of them. Let me know if you want to read any of these books or if I convinced you to read any of them. I definitely want to know. And if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Also, go ahead and follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Goodreads, Storygraph, TikTok. All the links are down below, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye!